Hello and welcome back to our second installment of Weekly Missions Roundtable. My name is Ali Hazrati. I'm the West Coast admin assistant, and this is Mike Pettingill, our fearless leader. He's the director of the West Coast and our awesome man who gets stuff done. This is Mr. Anthony English, the face and personality of our online presence. How are you guys doing today? You happy to be here?
Good. It's all good.
I'm excited. I love this.
This is really fun. We're really enjoying this. And this week, we are going to be talking about how each of us got interested in missions in general and how we got involved in missions with MTW. So first up, Mike, will you let us in on how you and Aaron got interested in missions and a little bit about your missions history on the field?
Yeah. So I didn't become a Christian until I was 20, and I've been involved in church active ever since. But missions never. I can't say I'm that kid that heard the first missionary in the pulpit and looked over at mommy and said, "Mommy, I want to go to India," and that never crossed my mind. My wife and I got involved. We had a daughter, and she was 2 at the time, and we were involved in a local church, local Presbyterian church, and they asked me to be the director of high school youth. And so I took that job. I ended up doing that ministry for 8 years out of my house. And in the midst of that, we changed from our first pastor to our second pastor. And our second pastor came to us from Georgia. I didn't really know him, but I volunteered to fly back to Georgia and help him drive across the U.S. And so we're in the car at 4 o'clock in the morning in middle of Georgia. I don't know anything about Georgia. And he's a big fire plug of a dude, muscles. And he just kind of looks over at me and goes, "So you're my youth group leader?" "Yes, sir." "So where did you take the kids on a missions trip last summer?" "We've never done that, sir." "Where are you taking them next summer?" "Wherever you think is best, sir." He said, "Well, I'm sure you'll pray about it and it'll be just fine." So that's how missions started in my life, was in the middle of a U-Haul at 4 a.m. somewhere in Georgia. And so I, in my mid 30s, I took the youth on a missions trip, and I thought, well, I got to make this as easy on me as possible, right? So I found the closest foreign missions trip I could find. I didn't want to, this is pre 9/11, but I didn't want to deal with passports or airports or none of that stuff. So we drove to Juarez, Mexico, and it was life altering. And that was my very first short-term missions trip. Took high school youth. The next summer, I contacted MTW and I said, "Where do you want us to serve?" And they said, "Well, we have a new ministry that's kicking off in Lima, Peru. Why don't you go there?" And so we went to Lima, Peru the next summer, and then the following summer we went to Guatemala, and then the following summer we went back to Peru, but we went to Cusco, and then the following summer we went to Belize. And at the same time, my wife, she went on a mission trip when she was 13, but that's her only experience. We're both international travelers, but so at the same time I'm taking the youth, I tell my wife, "Why don't you take the adults?" And so she started going. She went to Egypt, and she went to the Philippines, and she went to Sri Lanka, and she led all these adult missions trips from our church. And so by the time we ended up going full-time missions, we had been, between the two of us, on 11 short-term missions trips, and we had never been together. So the Lord kind of really spoke into me. I know this is a denomination that's predominantly Anglo and very Reformed, and you got to be careful about what you say. But I heard the Lord's voice for the first time in my life, and He said, "I want you to take your family full time on the mission field." And my wife and I both had 6-figure jobs, and we were in the professional world, secular world. And we were getting ready to pay off our house, and we had a daughter, and it's like I'm like, "Lord, what are you talking about? I'm not going to the mission field. That's for people who don't have resaleable skills. That's not for people who are successful." And so I went to my wife, and she describes it as like it was our first date. I'm wringing my hands, and we're out at a restaurant. I'm wringing my hands, and I'm nervous, and I'm just one more beer. And she's like, dude, why are you so nervous? Because I know you're not pregnant. And so, so I said, so what do you think about doing this missions thing full time? She's like, yeah, of course. Like, no, I mean like sell the house, quit the jobs, raise a daughter overseas. Yeah. Okay. I'm like, all right. That didn't go like I was hoping it would, but so we called MTW and I called him and I said, hey, I want to be a full-time missionary. And they're like, oh, cool. Where do you want to serve? I don't know. God said to be a missionary. He didn't say where. Oh, well, what's your background? Like, oh, I work full-time in politics. Oh, does your wife do anything useful? I'm like, oh yeah, she's a nurse. Yeah. Oh, good. So you guys probably want to get involved in medical ministry. I'm like, I don't know. God didn't say that either. And so MTW got back to us a couple weeks later and they gave us 3 ministry sites, and one by one over time, they all fell off the plate. And so we finally got introduced to this guy in the office in Mission to the World in Georgia. And he said, man, I've been praying. I want you guys to start a new team for us in Honduras in Central America. I'm like, cool, let's check it out. And so we flew down there and we checked it out and we said, yeah, let's do this. So we sold our home and we quit our jobs and we moved down to Honduras to start a new team. And we were down in Honduras for 8 years. And by the time we left, we had a team of about a dozen North American missionaries and about 20 Honduran nationals working with us. We had 2 seminaries. One was constructed. One was not seminaries, medical clinics. We had a seminary that was being constructed. We had a high school that was up and running. We had a home for single teenage moms. We had a street kids ministry, and we just kind of figured it was in good hands, and we're ready to move on. So we accepted a calling to go start another new ministry in Equatorial Guinea in Western Africa. And the cool statistical anomaly about Equatorial Guinea is it's the only country in all of Africa, with its 50 plus countries, where they actually speak Spanish. So our skills transferred over, and I became a seminary professor. My wife continued her medical ministry, and we did that for 2 years until we came back about 3 years ago in the summer of 2017 to start this ministry. So it's a long explanation, but that's it. And so I've had my wife and I have both written books on missions. And oh, thanks, Anthony. And
I don't even know how this got in my hand.
And my wife's book looks something like this. So yeah, if you want to check them out, they're on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or whatever. My wife's book is Termites Ate My Couch: The Stories of a Missionary Nurse, which is really much better than my book, which is called The Beautiful Feet of Mission. So check them out. Love to talk about missions, love to write about missions, love to pray and think and teach about missions. So that's what I do. I love this work.
Right.
Love that setup. And obviously Erin is such an awesome and strong woman who has a heart for the Lord to follow fervently with you.
She's a rock star.
Especially to put up with Mike.
Dude, I always say my wife does the cool stuff. I just carry her bags, man. She's a rock star.
That's so cool. Anthony, would you like to go next and tell us about how you got involved in missions and how you grew to come to this job?
Yeah. Grew up, and missions wasn't really on my radar. But when I got saved when I was 9, so in elementary, I started to realize I love to talk to people about Jesus. So I remember like recess, talking to people, trying to talk to people about Christ. They weren't trying to hear it though. They're trying to play tetherball and foursquare and wall ball. But I'm trying to talk to people about Christ. And then in middle school, that just exploded. And I really learned that my passion was to talk to others about Christ. Jeremiah 20 verse 9. I experienced a lot of, being made fun of because I was a Christian in middle school. Middle school is hard enough already, but to add the fact that you are a believer who's trying to walk with the Lord and for the Lord, and that adds more hardship. So Jeremiah 20 verse 9, when I, tell the Lord I will not make mention of his name any longer, his word is in my heart, shut up in my bones like a roaring fire, and I'm weary with holding it in. Indeed, I cannot. So I found that to be my experience. And then in high school, it exploded more. And in high school was the first place that I ever shared the gospel publicly. And what I mean by that is I open air preached for the first time as a senior in high school. So stood up after school, a bunch of kids out there waiting for the bus. I stood up and started to proclaim the gospel. And as I got older and continued to share the gospel, I kept hearing people over and over say, well, I've never heard it this way. I've never heard the gospel this way, or, I've never really heard this message, period. And as I kept hearing that, God really started to expand my vision, because I'm thinking to myself, well, if people in America have never heard this message or never heard it this way, and we know we are Reformed, so long gospel, they've never heard it this way, and there's churches on every corner, and the gospel is so easily accessible. How many people worldwide have never heard the gospel? And that not only encouraged me and inspired me, but it also scared me. It terrified me because, just like Mike says, being Reformed, we don't like to talk about the Holy Spirit that much. He doesn't really get a lot of airtime, sadly. But we also don't like to talk about the subject of hell. And I firmly, fully believe that hell exists. It is a real place. And so many people that we know and that we don't know are on their way there because of their crimes against a holy God. And that Christ is the only way that one can have their crimes against him wiped away. So that encourages me and it motivates me, because not only is it love for God and love for neighbor, but it's also not wanting to see people go into eternity without Christ. Cut to 2018. I'm working at Verizon Wireless, and a friend of mine on Facebook puts a post about MTW in the position of assistant director. So I read it, and I call to my wife, baby, come here. She comes here. I'm like, hey, boo, look. I'm like, look at the description. And she's like, hey, baby, this looks like something you can do. I'm like, homie, I can do this. I feel like I can do it. I feel like this is me. This is my skill set. I'm excited. So by God's grace and Mike's mercy, I got the job. And honestly, I'm in love with it. It's my dream job. I love what I do. And I went on my first ever global missions trip back in 2018 to Central Asia, which was life-changing. So if you have not gone on a mission trip yet, please let me encourage you to do so. So that's just a little bit about my story. Would love to talk to you more about it, more about missions as well. And I'm going to go ahead and pass the ball to Allie. What is your story, family?
So similar to Mike, I didn't grow up wanting to be a missionary. It was never really on my radar. I actually wasn't saved until I was a senior in college in 2012. But I studied security and international affairs in college, and before I was even a believer, God had been working in my heart. I was going to church, so I heard the word. I knew the truth. It just hadn't clicked yet in my life. But I had really developed a passion for refugees, and especially people coming out of war-torn areas, like especially Afghanistan. So my senior year of college at University of Georgia, I took a big leap and took Farsi, a Persian language class. And
at least you started with an easy one. That's good.
I had not done well in Spanish, French, or Italian. None of those ever clicked. But I looked at my transcripts, and even if I failed, I could still graduate. So I thought, why not? Take the shot. But that language clicked so much faster than any other one. And that's when my love grew for the Persian people and Afghani people. So after I graduated from college, I moved to the land of the 7 churches, and I served in a Farsi-speaking church there, a brand new believer. And again, talking about the Holy Spirit, there was a lot of pushback from people in my life, thinking it was crazy. I wasn't even a believer for a full year, but I just knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that's where God wanted me to go. And it was the best growing experience of my life. There, I served there for a little bit over a year. That's where I met my husband, who is a believer. He was a believer, and he became a believer in Iran and was a refugee, and came out and has been resettled in America.
So you quite literally love the Persian culture.
I literally love Persian, one specifically, but I love the Persian people in general as well. And I'm still working on the language until the day I die. But then from there, after I moved back to the States, I served as a youth ministry at a church in Georgia with the big heart for missions. And it was there God presented so many awesome opportunities. I led short-term trips to Manila, Philippines, and Bulgaria many summers in a row, and to Chattanooga as well. And that's where just my love for missions continued to grow. And it was such a joyful experience to share it with teenagers and see them grow and love and have a heart for missions and have the desire to do that in the future. So one day my husband and I hope to end up on the mission field again. So we're just praying through that, and we know that God's in control and he will lead us in his time.
Awesome.
But who's gonna keep us together? Who's gonna keep us together?
So that's about us. That's our background. Our job is to get you excited about missions. So we have a lot of resources we want you to check out. Anthony, where can people see us on Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook is going to be MTW West Coast Office. We also have a YouTube channel, MTW West Coast. Check us out. Then our actual Mission to the World page, mtw.org/West Coast. And then we also have our wonderful newsletter that you can contact Allie and she can sign you up, or I believe you can sign up on the MTW
on the website too, yeah.
Website as well.
Awesome. So you can send us emails. You can see our first name and last name on the screen. It's firstname.lastname@mtw.org. You can give us a call at 213-761-4619. And in Spanish, Cristo te amo, hasta próxima semana. Ali, you got anything in Farsi you want to give us?
Haley shok mikrodem barayin forsat vagan isai messi. Haley forsat bozorg mi de bema horay shok.
Awesome. All right. So
and peace, y'all.
Peace. Yeah. Hey, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week for episode 3. Take care. Love you guys.
Thank you. Bye.